Today I have, and I know I say this all the time, but this week I have a very dear friend to me. He's one of the brothers who I've always looked up to prior to becoming a Muslim, and even in my early years, and obviously throughout my life as a Muslim, who's been an inspiration to me, and inshallah his story will be an inspiration for you today. His name is Abdul Hakim. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And as I said, he has a very inspirational story, and no doubt through the course of this 1 hour's program you will be able to inshallah learn some lessons from his story, inshallah. So without any further ado, we'll go straight into the story of Abdul Hakim, brother Abdul Hakim, of his life prior to Islam and when he became a Muslim, inshallah. So Abdul Hakim, I wanted to start, as always, from the beginning, from your very tender years, from obviously as far back as you can remember, and just maybe just a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and you know your family, if you had any brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth.
Grew up in a single parentage household. Grew up in Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove. Young sister, 8 years younger than myself. Basically, just grew up in the inner city, like a lot of us. Yes,
of course, many of us that have converted to Islam. And was your mother a religious person? In other words, did you have any religious, how can I say, influences in your younger years?
Yeah, my family was Christian. Used to go to church all the time. But basically, my grandma and my grand-aunt were my real inspirations. They were the real ladies of light within the family, and they were the ones who I used to look up to. Used to go to Sunday school and stuff, and yeah, basically, always enjoyed going to church, but couldn't quite get with the concept of the Trinity.
Sure.
And that was the basic niggle that I always had when my intellect was at a level enough to kind of be asking questions.
So it's quite interesting that you mentioned did you say your
grandma and grand-aunt? Yeah, my gran and her sister.
Right, and they were sources of influence for you. I mean, in the sense of positive influence, obviously. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a young child, are you saying that you actually were looking up to these people because they were religious?
Yeah, I mean, it was religious in that it was natural. It wasn't religious like a false kind of persona or whatever. They were real, like, ladies of, like, honest, you know, integral people, real integrity. You know, you could see it and feel it, and everybody who knew them felt that.
Okay, alhamdulillah, good. And so you mentioned the Trinity. So did you, for example, might sound like a silly question, but did you grow up believing in God? I mean, you know, I remember when I was a non-Muslim. I'm from a Christian background as well, as you well know. I always believed in God. It wasn't as if when I became a Muslim from atheism and then suddenly believed in God. No, that was always there. Was that the case for you as well?
Yeah, I'd say as long as I can remember, as far as I can remember, like intellectually, like considering and going to church, I always did believe, but the church wasn't quite right. The belief of the church wasn't quite right for me. I remember being in Sunday school and often like questioning the Trinity. You know, how can 3 be 1 and 1 be 3? And never really getting a proper answer.
Sure. And I mean, okay, so you had these questions, these theological questions that were never really answered. Obviously, as we know now, it's not really something that somebody can give you a satisfactory answer to. But I mean, in terms of the church itself, I mean, okay, you had these ideological, theological problems, if you like, or challenges that they were not able to help you answer. But did you feel at home in the church? Did you feel at one? I mean, even at this very young age, you know, did it feel like this is where you were meant to be, or not really?
Not really. Within a certain capacity, yes. You know, in that, you know, there was that kind of that family structure. You had your friends, there was other families and whatnot. But in regards to, like, deep down in the core of myself, I didn't feel I didn't feel complete. I didn't feel complete there. The questions were not being answered, you know.
Okay, cool. And in these tender years of your life, these fledgling years when you're growing up in the church setting, did you have any experience of Islam at all, or was this something that just kind of hit you later on in life?
Well, the primary school that I went to, we had there was a few Moroccans and there was one Egyptian boy that was at my school, and their family were Muslim. But I didn't know at the time, or didn't really realise the difference or whatever. I know their mothers used to wear scarves and whatnot, but there was always something about their families that there was kind of a more cohesion, more togetherness, and that kind of stuck with me. But I didn't really know that at a later date I would turn around and become a Muslim.
Sure,
you know?
sure. Well, was it ever the case for you that you maybe, in those early years when you saw these, as you said, Moroccans and Egyptians, and presumably maybe some Algerians as well, especially because you said you're from Notting Hill, did you ever think of Islam as being a religion for a specific region, i.e. these countries and maybe some Asians as well?
Yeah, you know, Arab or Pakistani religion at the time. You know, it wasn't ours to hold on to, so to speak, because I'd always been fed Christianity.
Sure.
And those who you looked up to was, you know, who you kind of took inspiration from. This is what they were saying. So, you know, adults, when you're young, like, the elders can't do or say anything wrong, but obviously there's still that kind of not fully feeling complete and right with, you know,
Sure.
fully at one with what they're saying.
Sure. And I guess back in those days as well, to see black Muslims must have been a bit difficult.
Yeah, I can't remember seeing anything. Maybe the odd, maybe going to Oxford Street or something, maybe the odd sort of Nigerian or West African person in some rows, but not even relating it to Islam at the time.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense even to me. So you had these friends, Muslim friends, and you saw the kind of family setting, and as you said, there was a lot more cohesion there. Were there any personalities, like for instance in the news or anything like that, that were Muslim? You maybe not were able to join all the dots together, but were there any personalities, I don't know, for example, Saddam Hussein or whoever, on the television screen that you saw, and maybe, you know, you knew they were Muslim, and maybe you related it to Islam as well, or not really?
I mean, it's only one person comes automatically to my mind, and that's Imam Ruhollah Khomeini, rahmatullah. I can remember sort of being 7, 8 years old. Now, later on, coming to know that it was at the time of the revolution in Iran, but not knowing, you know, being a young boy, not knowing political stuff at that time. But I remember being awestruck and sometimes actually going and sitting in front of the telly and looking at his face. I mean, that's who stands out for me, you know.
Really? So you would just literally go and just have a look?
Yeah, you know, if I was, you know, I'd be playing with my toys or whatever. When he came onto the television, things stopped. You know, yeah. And I guess maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, news wasn't really something that you were particularly interested in at that time. No, not at all, not at all. But I mean, when he came, it was just his presence, the aura of the man. I don't know, you know, he just had an effect on me. You know?
Alhamdulillah, good. So we've been able to paint a picture of your early years, if you like. Now, I'm assuming, you know, you're now beginning to reach your teenage years, 10, 11, 12, 13 onwards. Things obviously began to start to change for you, because when we reached that particular age, maybe the influence that or the, if you like, the boundaries set for us by our parents slowly start to get pushed further and further afield, and we begin to push the boundaries more and more. Was that the case with you? And if so, I mean, where did it lead you to?
It was definitely the case for myself. I mean, life was quite colourful, to say the least, in Notting Hill and, you know, surrounding areas. I was, you know, quite lively, in trouble, sometimes in trouble with the law and different stuff. Sometimes, you know, find myself arrested again or whatever, you know. But yeah, it was colourful, to say the least.
Alhamdulillah. And What would you consider to be the reasons behind this? Was it because of peer pressure? Was it because of finance? But then again, I'm guessing, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe at these young age, between the age of 13 to 18, maybe finance wasn't so much of an issue. Did you really need that much money?
Well, I don't know, finance kind of was an issue. Being a single parent, sometimes this kind of, the modern day person has this kind of sort of microwave kind of mentality. They want it now. The oven baking doesn't exist for them. So yeah, I think a lot of it was peer pressure, having the latest clothes, the latest gadgets and stuff. And just kind of, not having any alpha male, no true role models to really show you the direction and the way to go, that the kind of slow road is sometimes the best road, not this fast, now. And yeah, that I would say was the main reason why one involved oneself in that sort of life.
So you're saying that there weren't really any positive role models, all the role models were kind of negative?
Yeah, I would say growing up where I grew up, I'd say that the few role models that there were like sort of the salmon swimming upstream. There's very few. So what you saw, it was like the few good role models were like a drop in the ocean, so to speak.
So obviously the majority of the role models weren't giving you a positive path to go along.
Yeah, you could say that. Even if, with Caribbean culture, like Afro-Caribbean culture, even if somebody's, there's different angles, different facets that one can be caught in, so to speak. So, say for an example, somebody who's a worker and doesn't steal, they may be a womanizer or a gambler or something. So there was very few people who were the like complete package, so to speak, for you to really look towards, and you could take all the facets of their life and really move forward with it. There was very, very, very few people, if not nobody.
Sure. And I'm sure this goes far beyond just the Afro-Caribbean community in the sense of, again, where you were growing up. I suppose maybe with the exception of some of these Muslim families, would that be right?
Yeah, some of the Muslim families, there was a good few elders who were kind of husband and wife. There was togetherness, there was glue, there was commitment with the families. But again, like I've said, it's like that kind of, there's nobody who you can totally look at and really run with or move with.
Sure.
There wasn't really anybody. So there was, even if say Mr. X, if Mr. X was your person who you kind of was inclined towards, but he had his downfall, which was maybe alcoholism or gambling or womanizing or something. So there was very few people to really latch onto.
Okay, yeah, sure. So and I remember you telling me earlier on that even though you were living this lifestyle, even though you were basically doing the same things as everybody else, and moving up the ranks, if you like, in terms of your reputation on the street, if you don't mind me saying so, there was always a conflict within you. There was always something in you telling you that this isn't right.
Yeah, no, definitely, especially around 18, 19, when I was coming to the end of my teens, there was like that kind of, being in trouble with the police and kind of this fighting and kind of different stuff. There was this kind of period where, I don't know what descended or the internal mechanisms that kicked in, but there was this kind of, you're not a teenager anymore. You're leaving your teens now. You're becoming a young man. This behavior is not going to be excusable anymore. So then that kind of soul search, I was kind of still involved in the kind of, in that kind of culture, kind of lifestyle, but there was an element, there was a retreating that was taking place,
And it was around about this time, 1920, I think you were telling me, where you decided that the best thing for you to do was to actually pack your bags, leave the country, and go and spend some time abroad, just to get yourself out of that cycle of, the lifestyle, if you like.
Yeah, basically what had happened was kind of 1920, I was still kind of involved in all the culture and stuff, raving and partying every day, kind of Saturday kind of mentality. but kind of there was real questions. I was really asking internal questions. You know, the internal voice was, let's say, the internal voice, the volume was being raised on the internal voice is the best way to put it. And then there came that junction about 20 and a half, you know, coming up to my 21st birthday, that I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Barbados for 6 months. I really need to go away and have a think, be away from all of this, detach myself from it and have a think where I'm going in life. And I made an announcement on my 21st birthday, basically,
Really?
and told all my friends, yeah, that I was going. And they were quite shocked, you know.
Probably sad to see you go as well.
Yeah, some were happy, I guess. I don't know. Allah knows best.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, and that's a big step. I mean, at the age of 21, I mean, you may have been abroad before, but the point is when you're so used to an environment, and not just used to an environment, I'm sure you were very comfortable in that environment. You knew where you stood. You had the respect of many of your peers. You know, people would think twice about, you know, being disrespectful to you, etc., etc. So for you at that particular age to then say, I'm going to actually come out of this, where I know my place in the world and I know how to survive, and I'm actually going to come out of this and then go abroad. I mean, subhanAllah, that was a very big step you took.
Yeah, it's just like I said before, it's that volume on the internal voice just really became heightened at that junction, and one had to then act upon it. It was like bordering on deafening me, the noise. You know, come on, you know, you're better than this, you know, better than this exists. There is a way. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You know, there's got to be a better life than this, kind of, so to speak. Even though I didn't know at the time, you know, about Islam or nothing like that, but there was this voice that just kept kind of resonating very loudly, that it reached the stage where I couldn't not listen to it anymore, else it would have maybe driven me crazy or something.
Right, so on your 21st birthday, you announced to the masses that you're going to go away. And alhamdulillah, you went away for how long? 6 months?
6 months,
6
to
months.
Barbados.
So you decided to go away to Barbados for 6 months. And you then came back. What happened when you came back?
When I came back, you know, things weren't the same. I could see, it's like the lenses had been cleaned on my glasses, or so, you know, on my glasses. So I started to see things from different lenses, i.e. the Caribbean's a slower pace. So when I came back, what then happened was, within a few weeks, I went to look for one of my good friends who at this time was managing a group who were my good friends who I grew up with, who had now become Muslim. And that basically was the beginning of the journey, so to speak.
So if you like, this was probably your first real, if you like, direct encounter with Islam.
Yeah, definitely. By way of, you know, those who you love, and definitely people who had done what you've done and had crossed the line. You know, not people who have always done it or dabbled in it, but people who clearly were living the same life as yourself and had now made a shift. You know, it was mind blowing, to be honest, to see them and witness it.
You know, I guess are you trying to say basically that these people weren't half steppers? What I mean by that is they were living the life in its totality beforehand.
Oh no, they were doing everything. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples. I remember going, you know, seeing them on a few different occasions, and I remember going one day and offering them, you know, who wants to have a joint, or, you know, who wants to have something, and them saying no. I remember going another day, like, you know, I'm on the way, I'm going to go to the off license to buy some drinks. What does everybody want? The guy who managed them, he said, I can't remember what drink it was, but he ordered an alcoholic drink. But these guys have ordered orange juice and Coca-Cola or something. I'm like, you can have more. And they absolutely point blank refused because of now they're Muslims. And, you know, it was just really, I just couldn't believe it. But then the next phase, I remember coming one day and offering them breakfast. And when I've offered them breakfast, they're like, no, we're fasting today. I'm like, this is too much. You guys have gone too far now. You're not on top of it now. You're not eating now. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that not only was it the surprise or the astonishment in the change that they'd made from the lifestyle beforehand that you were living and the lifestyle that they're now living, where they point blank refusing these things, and it's not fake, they actually mean it. But it was also the fact that you saw in them a tranquility.
Oh, definitely. The peace is like, I couldn't believe that somebody could live life. I mean, my peace and tranquility that I searched for was in drugs, or was in drink, you know, was in alcohol. But these guys, they've got this peace without alcohol, and the peace it's more lasting, it's not temporary, you know. It was like, you know, you'd drink sometimes and, you know, you'd wake up the following morning and you'd feel like rubbish.
Yes.
But these guys, you know, it was constant, it was ongoing, it was never ending. It was like, wow, you know.
Alhamdulillah, good. And so your friends have now, obviously, they're getting you, if you like, they've turned the light on upstairs. You're realizing that there's something in what they have, although you may not particularly at this particular point be interested per se in Islam, but you realize, no, these guys are definitely onto something, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So when this happened, I remember that you were telling me as well that you weren't just seeing them. When you came back from Barbados, it wasn't naturally so. You weren't able to just totally divorce yourself from the life that you were living beforehand. So you were kind of, if you like, living in these two different worlds, going back to the stuff you were doing before, but spending time with these other guys. What happened? I mean, were you spending more time with one than the other, or how did it work out?
At first, definitely, I was just seeing these guys because, like I said, the guy who managed them was a good friend of mine also, and he hadn't changed in any way or form. So him and I could do what we did, and these guys were there, he'd, you know, produce them or do what he had to do. But what I found, increasingly, I found myself more magnetized to these guys. And I'd be with my other friends, but then be like, nah, I'm leaving, and go and look for these guys. I just found it was just a natural progression that took place.
So your heart kind of yearned to be more with them than the other
definitely
friends.
inclined towards them for sure.
And what happened one Ramadan when you were with them? And this is, I think it was at the same time you mentioned that you offered them food.
Oh yeah. I offered them food, and they said they were fasting. And I can remember, like, fasting, what the heck do you want to do that for, you know? So I laid myself a challenge and said I'll fast for a particular amount of days. I can't remember what it was exactly now. And I can remember, like, you know, fasting, having banging headaches, going to bed at midday. But, like, now I've set this challenge. I have to do this. This has to be done. I will complete the days. So I remember one day being with them, and breakfast time was coming in a couple of hours, and them saying, we're going to the mosque, would you like to come? And I said, yeah, definitely I'll come. And I'll never forget, like, they went and made ablutions, and that was quite interesting to see. But what really got me that day, what really stood out and really it had me in tears, I remember watching them going through the units of prayer. And I remember it came to my mind the verse in the Bible, which is once a man, twice a child. And seeing them in sajda, coming back up and then going back into sajda, it reminded me of a child, the embryo in the womb. And it was just really, it just really took my breath away, and I was crying. And I can remember them afterwards coming and saying, like, well, you know, what are you crying for? And I explained to them what I had seen, and they couldn't even believe it themselves. Like, they said, we've never looked at it in that kind of way.
Alhamdulillah. And so this coincided with you beginning to read about Islam, obviously, because now you have these close friends of yours who you're spending more time with. You've gravitated towards them. You're spending more time with them. And obviously they're giving you information, they're giving you leaflets and possibly books as well. So this was, I guess, the beginning of your journey where you actually started researching for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Started to do, at that time I started to do comparative studies. I was reading like Maurice Bucaille, Quran and Science, listening to like Ahmadi, that was big for me at that time, you know, the comparative studies, you know, the speciality in Christianity, that was very big for me. And yeah, just started the journey. I remember, I think it was Martin Ling's Muhammad. I remember reading that and really being awe-inspired by the Prophet ﷺ's behaviours. You know, I found it impeccable. And Malcolm X, at the time, reading a bit about Malcolm X and kind of digging a bit deeper. And I used to sit down with the guys a lot. We used to sit down like till late at night asking questions and really delving into the bottom of things. And I found that they had a lot of the answers which, you know, weren't given to me before, you know, like in Christianity and reading the Quran, that the Quran really gave me that kind of, just unlocked the mystery. The Bible, I find, speaks in tongues a lot, but the Quran, starting to now read the Quran and getting my first Quran at that time, it was really just to the point, no messing about, you know. And the problem that I always had with the Trinity and believing in one God, the Quran was just speaking it to me, especially Surah Ikhlas.
Yes, of course. And I guess your knowledge about, or your prior knowledge about the biblical stories of the prophets and so on and so forth, when you came to the Quran, it probably just put everything into its right place, made everything made sense afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. And what I found really, what was really, I'd say, comforting was the explanation of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, that Isa alayhi salam was mentioned more than Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Quran, and that was really something for me. That really, you know, captured my heart. That the Quran was talking about Isa and you know, Maryam alayhi salam and stuff. It was really that was really a big junction for me.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I can understand that, because obviously when you're coming from a Christian background, to know that there's this religion, actually it's not just Christianity, but there's another religion that respects Isa just as well. Or we could even say, when we became Muslim, we understood Isa 10 times better than we did as Christians.
Definitely, most definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Brother Abdullah Hakim. Inshallah, when we come back from the break, we'll look into when he took his Shahada. Obviously, we've pretty much reached that point now, as you can hear from the story so far. And then, inshallah, we'll look into his experiences after converting to Islam and how he got in touch with the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessing be upon them all.